Good evening and welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. We'll be joined by our Week in Review guests in just a moment. But first, some of today's top stories. A 42-year-old California man is charged with attempted homicide after police say he broke into the San Francisco home of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and attacked her husband. 82-year-old Paul Pelosi is said to be expected to make a full recovery after surviving the attack. The assailant was reportedly searching for House Speaker Pelosi, shouting, quote, "Where's Nancy?" during the attack. Political leaders on both sides of the aisle spoke out, offering their support to Pelosi and condemning the attack. The local U.S. Attorney's Office launches a hotline to report voting rights complaints on Election Day. U.S. Attorney John Lausch says it's part of the Department of Justice's regular efforts to safeguard the election process, including deterring discrimination and intimidation at the polls. The local FBI field office will also have agents monitoring any allegations of fraud or intimidation on Election Day. The hotline numbers are 312-469-6157 and 312-469-6158. The Darren Bailey for Governor campaign announces a popular right-wing influencer will be campaigning with him in Illinois. Former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is set to campaign at an event with Bailey and Illinois GOP Chair Don Tracy on Monday night. Gabbard was formerly a Democrat and ran for president in 2020 as a Democrat in the primary. She announced recently she had left the party. She has been a regular presence on Fox News, making comments supportive of Russia and condemning United States assistance to Ukraine. And now to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Brandon Pope of WCIU, Mike Flannery of Fox 32 News, Mariah Woelfel of WBEZ, and Mike Mulligan of 670 The Score. Let's get right to it. Thank you all for being here. I think we do have to start with that national news, the attack of Paul Pelosi. What we know, a 42-year-old man charged with homicide, among other things, attempted homicide. Mike Flannery, your reaction to this?
Well, it's here too. I'm put in mind of what happened to one of the candidates running for DuPage County Board Chair, State Representative Deb Conroy, who was involved in passing a law that dealt with some health issues and got caught up in all the COVID screaming and hollering and said there were terrible, vile threats that came in, and I know others have had to face it too. It's a hallmark of politics, and we're seeing this with the people who run elections around the country.
Right, folks that are working in elections too. I mean, they were targeted the last election.
Not making much money at all.
Yeah. Well, and we have the midterm election coming up. Mike Mulligan, is there this foreboding sense that this, vitriolic rhetoric is going to lead to more violence?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think that it's already started, right? Where was this going to wind up with somebody like this, with some lunatic that clutches onto some weird, idea in his head that there's a whole conspiracy? Where do you get that, right? The people in charge have been saying that basically since the election, the last presidential election. So the whole thing seems inevitable to me, and I think it's pathetic that we allowed this to happen.
There's a lot of content out there that provides fodder for folks that, according to reports, this guy had some mental issues. We'll have to see where that story goes. Last night, we had U.S. Senate candidates Tammy Duckworth and Kathy Salvi here in our studio. Here's part of their exchange on PPP loans.
Senator Duckworth, where have you been in 10 years? I'll tell you one thing you did with that $1.9 trillion spending boondoggle. You said that it goes to the school. Well, it doesn't. In fact, you had an opportunity to keep PPP funds from prisoners, probationers, and parolees, and you voted against that bill.
The PPP funds, I believe your law firm took those PPP funds, $200,000 worth, and you applied for the forgiveness, so you never paid those back. I think it is hypocritical. I supported the PP fund. I supported your law firm getting the PP funds, but I do think it's hypocritical to ask for loan forgiveness for yourself and your law firm, but not for students.
We talked about vitriolic rhetoric, but these are the kind of zingers we normally see in political debates. Brandon Pope, almost nobody nationally is prognosticating this race as very competitive. Does anything change after last night?
I don't think anything changes after last night, but I think people need to pay attention, though, to the shrinking margins here. A recent Emerson poll came out showing some gains by Salvi, some gains by Darren Bailey in the governor's race, and I think that shows that some messaging and campaigning on the Safety Act and misinformation around that, and hitting crime and hitting the economy, issues that are really on people's minds right now in our city and around the state. It's working, and it's closing some of those margins. I don't think Salvi's got a chance to beat Duckworth, but it's getting closer and closer according to polling.
What about that, Mariah Woelfel? Do you see some of these races tightening up at all?
I think certainly we have to be careful of, when we look at polls, where those polls are coming from. There's obviously an incentive for candidates to say that their polls are tightening, but as Brandon said, latest Emerson poll shows some of those races tightening, but I think it also showed, even in down ballot races, Democrats just really kind of ahead by some significant
And some of these
margins.
polls that come from within campaigns are push polls, and they're designed to get more donors to pony up, saying, hey, look, we have a race here.
More excited.
And the problem for Bailey and for Salvi is there are Republican candidates in each of these statewide contests as well, and you can say, well, if after all this time you haven't made your mind up to vote for Tammy Duckworth or for J.B. Pritzker, maybe you're going to go for the other guy, but there's two other candidates, and those libertarians in some of the surveys I've seen, they're all getting about 5 or 6%, and that's an ace in the hole for the Democrats.
Well, with this Salvi Duckworth race, Mike Flannery, Ron Gidwitch, a longtime GOP power player in Illinois, helped recruit her to run for this, and then admitted he's not giving her any financial support. She's not getting any national financial support from the NRSC. Are they basically saying this race is not one of the ones where we think is competitive?
Yes.
And there are a few competitive races out there.
And they didn't bother to recruit anybody. I mean, I know a Republican who was seriously thinking about running this contest and did a poll, didn't like the numbers, did a poll, didn't like those numbers, did another poll, decided not to run. Duckworth's compelling personal story, the Iraq veteran, disabled, losing her limbs when that RPG round got stuck in the helicopter and brought the chopper down. They decided not to put any cash in this one.
And speaking of other races, we had a forum for the Attorney General Kwame Raoul, the incumbent Democrat versus Tom DeVore, the upstart Republican. This is where the Safety Act comes in. Brandon Pope, is that something that could help Mr. DeVore take on the incumbent?
I think it helps DeVore tighten those margins. I don't think it helps him win, but there's no doubt the Safety Act, the Democrats have to figure out how they're going to navigate this. They've allowed the messaging around it to kind of be taken over, and then when pressed on it, they'll say, oh, yeah, we could make some fixes like Raoul has conceded previously, and even Governor Pritzker, but they don't give details on what exactly needs to change about the Safety Act and what amendments they want to see. And voters who are already unclear and unsure about what the Safety Act is, and you've got the misinformation going around, that's not what they want to hear. So you're going to see that tighten up a little bit.
Certainly things are going to change about the Safety Act. And all the commercials in favor of Darren Bailey have been about crime, but polling has shown that the economy way outweighs crime on voters' minds. So do you think these commercials and all this focus on crime is making an impact?
I think fear tactics work, and I think that's why people use them. I don't know if they work all the way, but I think the economy is the issue. And I think that's always been the case, right? It's about the economy, stupid.
Right.
That goes back a long time.
Well, this whole question about, the Safety Act's become a stand-in for crime. And while the mayor says, every time she sees reporters, the mayor says, well, there are fewer killings and shootings this year than last year, she ignores the 35% increase since 2019 when she took office, and then you break down carjackings.
Well, really since the pandemic. Since the pandemic began, it's really when you start to saw that spike.
But it's become a stand-in for crime, and it's conflated. And the Democrats, once they're talking about, in fairness to Raoul, he did say that it's this issue of whether you're a flight risk, how do you define that, prosecutors and police are going to have to come up with. They're going to have to do a lot more work. They're going to have to show that somebody they want to detain is a threat to maybe to a specific person, or...
And those are tough things to prove in front of judges.
Things to prove.
Yeah,
Not
Mariah.
every county's equipped for
I think
that.
whether crime or abortion, these two hot button issues that politicians are hoping will galvanize voters and get them to the polls, remains to be seen whether that will actually work. As you said, polls show that the economy outpaces both of those issues, and particularly in the governor's race, like in the primary, that didn't help Richard. Focusing on crime so much did not help Richard Irvin. You know, who came
And you have the
in-
Bailey campaign now focusing on crime. I wonder if they're going to do some Monday morning quarterbacking, saying maybe we should have focused on the economy a little bit more. Let's get to some city news. Yesterday, Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson launched his bid for mayor of Chicago. Here he is at his campaign event.
And so what is it that we need to do? We need to have treatment, not trauma, for those harmed by trauma. That's violence prevention. We need to fully invest in health care, in public housing, and green jobs, and fully funding our neighborhood schools. That's violence prevention. We need 100% affordability in this city. That's violence prevention.
Mariah Wolfel. Yeah, it's like we're buddies. Yeah, go ahead. We're sitting at the Billy Goat having a drink. Wolfel, what do you think about this? Mariah Wolfel, Brandon Johnson gets $1 million from the National Teachers Union. He's clearly the Chicago Teachers Union candidate. Is he going to do their bidding if he wins this race?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I mean, it is going to be interesting to see if the CTU, the Chicago Teachers Union, can finally get a candidate into office. What will negotiations with CPS and CTU look like, you know, contract negotiations? Right now, it's very easy for them to point fingers at one another. Will that be the case? Do you have a scapegoat when, you know, you elect one of your own into the fifth floor? But it remains to be seen if Brandon Johnson will be the choice of the wider progressive movement in Chicago. I think there's some signs that he will be, but certainly he's pushing that narrative, and he is certainly the candidate of choice for teachers.
And the last candidate of choice for the CTU, Tony Preckwill, did not do so well in the last election. So CTU maybe betting their fortunes will change this time. Do you think that he is a viable candidate here and that he could get someone into a runoff?
He's got a compelling story. He's from the West Side, but the name recognition, there's a gap there. I think it's going to be tough. Could he get to the runoff? Definitely. We're going to have to look at the fundraising dollars or what he raises money-wise. Lightfoot right now, I don't think has a candidate she's looking at that she's scared about right now, outside of maybe Paul Vallis, who could actually, I think, give her a really good fight in a runoff. Brandon Johnson, he's going to fight. I don't know if he's going to be able to clear that threshold of the name gap, the name recognition gap that people usually look for on the ballot.
And there were other progressive groups at this campaign launch, not just teachers' unions. Does that mean Mike Flannery, Congressman Chuy Garcia, who has been the lion of the progressive movement in recent years, kind of missed his moment to run for mayor if he wants to do that again?
Maybe, and it's not clear that he really wants to do it again. He's when he sits down and talks to reporters, he acts like he's seriously thinking about it, but he's putting it all off on his wife. And saying, you know, she doesn't really want to do it, which I read as, I'm not going to do it. Right. But here, do a story about me thinking about it.
Well, there are petitions out there. People are circulating petitions to get him on the ballot, and you see his website with his mustache there again. I mean, there are people that do want him to run.
I don't think you could rule it out. We can rule it out just yet. I think, like I said, there are signs that, in my mind, show more so that he's not going to run than he is. There are some progressive groups that endorsed him in the 2015 election who have come out early for Brandon Johnson, kind of indicating that they may know that Chuy's not going to run, or that might deter him from running. Also, State Representative Delia Ramirez, who is a close political ally and friend of Chuy Garcia, introduced and endorsed Brandon Johnson at his event, kind of saying that Brandon Johnson will be the candidate to fight for the Latino community, trying to, build a coalition there. And so I think there are some signs that he's not going to run.
It seems like the avenues for Garcia are narrowing. But, I mean, all we know at this point is wide open with this many candidates. Right. And no one has that much money relatively at this point. Let's talk about Chicago City Council. They met on Wednesday, and there was a heated exchange between Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Alderman Sophia King, who is also running for mayor.
And quite frankly, if you would spend more time attacking problems instead of people, we would be much better off.
Alderman King, You're out of order.
Thank you, Madam President.
You're out of order, and I'm not going to let you make a political speech on the floor because of your aspirations.
So everyone's running for office. I don't know who's not running for office, but Mariah Woelfel, this kind of stems from Sophia King is next in line to become chair of the Education Committee. Mayor Lightfoot wanted someone else. She lost. Is that kind of a rebuke of the mayor?
Yeah, it's a rebuke of the mayor, and that is for multiple reasons. That vote failed for multiple reasons. One, there's a movement by progressive aldermen to be able to pick their own committee chairs. So some may have voted it down because they're sick of the mayor getting to decide who chairs these committees, who then get to decide what legislation comes up for a vote. There are aldermen who were upset with the quickness in which the mayor introduced this and tried to get it passed.
And her pick was James Kappelman, who's retiring.
Who's retiring.
Help that make sense for me.
James Kappelman has a long career as a social worker. The mayor says that she thinks that he's the best person for the job.
To be head of the committee for the next couple of months?
For the next couple of months. I mean,
this is Lightfoot's style, right? I mean, Sophia King is the acting chair of that committee, right. And this was a move, and she's been demanding with the other aldermen that Martinez come over from CPS and answer questions from aldermen.
Right.
Lightfoot doesn't want any of that stuff going on, and so this was a move to strip that chairmanship, that acting chairmanship, from Sophia King.
You're telling me that politics is involved here, Mike.
It was hilarious to hear the mayor say, you can't make a political speech here. I'm the only one who gets to make political speeches.
I mean, it's already made political commercial there. You know, another person that's been absent is the head of the CTA, Dorval Carter. They've been asking him to testify about these ghost buses. Where is Dorval Carter? Why isn't he appearing before City Council?
We're looking for him. We're looking for him. I'd like to know.
Yeah, he doesn't have to. He answers to the Chicago Transit Authority Board, and you know, we had the Chicago Department of Transportation testify and defend their budget during budget hearings, but the CTA isn't part of the city's annual budgeting process. It's a sister agency, and that's where this push comes from on behalf of aldermen to try to pass an ordinance that would compel the CTA to come testify or face the city council withholding funds.
Or maybe the day he was going to testify, he got ghosted by his bus.
He was on his way.
Who knows? You know, Brandon Pope, there's also this issue this week with this cop with alleged ties to Proud Boys. Allegedly lied about talking to the FBI about it. The police department says there just isn't a lot of evidence to support these claims, so they gave him a suspension. The mayor backs that. Aldermen are really upset about that. How big a tempest is brewing here?
I think what's concerning and why you have that storm brewing is because we've seen reports from Nielsen, from Reuters, of other police departments across the country who have shown to have white supremacist groups or people that are members of white supremacist aligned groups. And in a city like Chicago, with our history of police violence and things like that, you don't want anything like that anywhere affiliated to Chicago police. So there's a lot of questions about how is this investigated, questions about what is that investigation look like, and what questions were asked. What did you find, what did you not find, and almost a lack of transparency here. And you hear the CPD superintendent talk about how there's a lack of evidence to support that.
But the Inspector General is saying, go back and look at this again.
Yeah.
We found enough evidence. What's with the discrepancy?
It says it's the FBI thing, right? They're saying that the FBI doesn't have the Proud Boys down as a hate group yet, and so therefore they can't rule it out, right?
And that's like in dispute as well, because the FBI has said in a statement that they don't deem groups hate groups. The FBI has deemed the Proud Boys a white supremacist group, and so the testimony on
Southern Poverty Law Center,
correct.
ADL.
No, that's I'm saying it's the definition of a hate group was not false, but incorrect testimony, I think, on behalf of Chicago police who testified in front of budget hearings. It remains the same. The FBI has determined them to be a white supremacist group, as well as the Southern Poverty Law Center, and so the discrepancy is perplexing.
Why would Mayor Lightfoot stick with this backing the superintendent on a suspension as opposed to more discipline?
Well, this is a key decision, and she is down the line with the superintendent. And it's interesting. Half a dozen of the would-be challengers out there. We'll see who actually gets on the ballot. at their announcement news conferences, they say, first thing we're doing is getting a new top cop. The mayor's down the line with him.
She's got to be seen backing her handpicked
Superintendent Brown. Yeah, I mean, she brought him in. She credits him for having lowered the level of shooting and killing from last year.
Right. He had vowed he was going to get it down to 300, which clearly it's gone in the other direction. Let's move on to some sports. Mike Mulligan, Monday night I think was the most satisfying night I've had as a Chicago sports fan in a few years. Bears beat the Patriots, Bulls beat the Celtics. The Bears, they have this revamped offense now, more designed runs for Justin Fields. Is this what we're going to see more of going forward?
Boy, I hope so. I mean, it seems like they finally figured out what he does best, and they're leaning into it. And I think that's the way to go. It's been really amazing to see the Bears beat a team coached by Bill Belichick on every single element. On offense, on defense, on special teams. When have you seen that happen to them, let alone have the Bears do it?
At the end of the game, it looked like Belichick kind of acknowledged to Matt Eberflus, like, hey, you got us.
He could have, Eberflus, if he wanted to, could have scored at the end of the game and put a 40-burger on the guy, so maybe he appreciated that he didn't run up the score on him. But, yeah, that's the best Bears game I think we've all seen in a very long time. You mentioned the Bulls beating the Celtics on the same night. You know, the Bulls last year could not beat the top teams. They've already beaten the Heat and the Celtics. So that's good to see as well. It was just a great night for Chicago over Boston.
So can Justin Fields and the offense repeat this against Dallas, which has a really good defensive line?
Yeah, it's a step up. It really is a step up. You know, Micah Parsons is the pass rusher. Now, he was limited in practice this week. He's got a shoulder.
Questionable.
Yeah, he's got a shoulder issue. But that guy, he actually can run as fast as Justin Fields. If you can believe that, his 40 time in his pro day was 4.39, and Fields was 4.41. I mean, both those guys can fly.
It's really not. So one had a longer eyelash.
But one guy is like 250 pounds. The other guy's 225.
450. That would be a freak of nature.
You could never run that fast. Well, but that was pretty extraordinary.
I have to also get to this trade. The Bears trade away Robert Quinn, who was a leader in the clubhouse, sets the team record for sacks last year, but he wasn't really on that pace this year. Does it really impact the play on the field much to lose him?
Well, I mean, he was probably facing a lot of double teams. He had 18.5 sacks last year, as you mentioned, which is a team record. This year he's got 1. And he's got 3 quarterback pressure. So he's not having the same type of season, but he's, one of the few real veterans. He's a 32-year-old guy. He's going to the Eagles. If I were him, I'd be delighted. They're the only team that hasn't lost in the entire league. So I think that I think they'll miss him and they'll miss his presence. And he is like he won the Good Guy Award, which the media gives out, because he's just a good guy. And he was available. And, usually if a guy has 18.5 sacks, he's pretty happy. So I don't know if that played into it, but I like Robert Quinn a lot. And I'm glad for him that he's going to a better situation. They announced today that he'll be a free agent at the end of the year. They've thrown out the other 2 years.
And they get a 4th-round pick. I mean, the most important thing for Bears fans is Justin Fields progressing. You're an Ohio guy. You saw him at Ohio State. Is he going the right direction? I think he is.
I think he's in the right direction. It's just, do the Bears and their front office believe in this guy? They're going to give him, because there's a lot of questions.
Get him a receiver. Get him some linemen.
They haven't done that. So it's like, if you're going to believe in this guy, you got to surround him with the talent you need.
Is there anything to tell you that Ryan Poles, a general manager, even if Fields continues to progress, Poles won't be sold because it wasn't his guy? He didn't draft him.
Justin Fields is in his 2nd year. He's still on his rookie contract. There is no way they're giving up on Justin Fields next year. I mean, it would take some catastrophe. Absolutely.
And there's no free agent quarterback.
And there's nobody that they're going to be able to get in here. And if you do, you might have like a Russ Wilson type situation. You know what I mean? Like
that's a terrible
Matt
situation.
Ryan didn't work out, right? I mean, I'm just saying, and that's Ryan Poles' good buddy. I'm just saying.
Wolfel, you have so many thoughts on this, don't you?
Yeah, I won't bore you.
But you're very interested in all this. All right, so the Bulls, Zach LaVine is going to sit out now with his knee. The Bulls gave him all this money.
Yeah, it's bad.
What's really going on with his knee?
Well, apparently, I mean, it seems like it might be a newer injury because he came back and they never mentioned anything. And then the Tuesday before the opener, it's like he's on the injured list with knee. They got to watch his knee. And if you watch him, his explosiveness, now he's knocking down threes the other night. That's great. But his explosiveness, he's getting his shot blocked. He's not getting to the rim in the same fashion. It takes a while. He had an off-season surgery, but at least he's playing. Alonzo Ball isn't even able to play, but it hurts them, no question about it.
This is their guy. All right, very quickly, Flannery and Mully, who's the next White Sox manager going to be?
It'll be really interesting.
I hope it's a motivator. I hope it's somebody who speaks Spanish. And
That sounds like Ozzie Guillen.
Ozzie Guillen.
You know,
Back to the Future.
Here's my only question about that.
I'm not sold on Ozzie.
Okay, but
Part 2.
You could have hired Ozzie before the World Series starts. Now you got to wait. World Series starts tonight. You got to wait till it ends before you can name a manager.
All right, we got to go watch the World Series, so we're out of time. So our thanks to Brandon Pope, Mike Flannery, Mariah Woelfel, and Mike Mulligan. And that is our show for this Friday night. Don't forget, you can get Chicago Tonight and the Weekend Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And be sure to join us tomorrow night at 6 for Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, and then immediately after that, Chicago Tonight Black Voices at 6:30. You can also see the Voices program Sundays starting at 10 p.m. And then, of course, we're back at 7 o'clock all next week. And now for the Weekend Review, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend.
Closed captioning is made possible